I entitled Enter the Past Tense because the person I had been before the age of 18, 19, once I got recruited into this, that person ceased to exist. For all intents and purposes, he died. He entered the past tense. That Roland was. He no longer is, or would be. So I simply marched into the past tense. First of all, it was cathartic. One of the reasons I broke down and became an alcoholic is because there was nobody ever to talk to about this stuff. When you have a top secret clearance, and my clearance goes beyond top secret, I've got sensitive compartmented information, alpha, gamma, hotel, atomo, I mean, you name it and I've got it. If you admit that you have a possible psychological problem or you need to talk to a psychologist, the first thing that happens is you lose your clearance. And for all intents and purposes, that means you lose your job. And that's a problem we have a lot with soldiers coming back from a war zone today. If they're suffering some kind of post-traumatic stress, they cannot talk to a psychologist or a psychiatrist because then their military career is over. Now, Congress is now looking at a new bill that, or the military is looking at a new bill that would allow them to talk to a psychologist, realizing that if they do face those fears, those traumatic experiences, they can be very productive members in that field. People need to talk. They need to share things that are pent up inside of them. And I couldn't just not talk to medical professionals. I couldn't talk to my family. Because A, I wouldn't put them in that kind of position. They'd be worried all the time. I'm talking about 24 hours a day. And I really had absolutely no friends because I could never really share myself with anybody. I say to those people they have to draw a very distinct difference between reality, again, and the movies. One person who read my book said they wanted more intrigue. What they meant by that was James Bond. They wanted the fiction. They wanted me sleeping with 20 Russian spies, which didn't happen in here. Although I'm sure if it were ever made into a movie, those 20 Russian spies
would somehow manage to
make
their way into it.
You know, people want that kind of thing. They want the romance. They want the intrigue. And that's not what this is. I wanted this to be real. I mean, me with all the warts. I don't do the martini shaken, not stirred. I don't do the Aston Healy. I don't have the three-piece suits, the tuxedos. It's a dirty business, and I was on the dirtiest end of a dirty business.
Whatever he had to do, I had no clue. He had a job having to do his regular day-to-day going to work job of being in the field of intelligence or security or anti-terrorism, and that was his regular job. It had nothing to do with the CIA. And so he couldn't tell me any of that information. I wouldn't ask him, well, how was your day at work? You know, I knew I wouldn't get any answers. Or what's happening in the world today? Are we going to war? Are we doing this? I couldn't ask because he couldn't tell me.
Right.
So any place he had to go, he would always, he'd always be home on time. I always knew, I thought, where he was. I'd always get a phone call. So there was never a time where he went missing that I was worried about where he was. Now, I find out later that, when our daughter was really young, he left. I thought to go teach class, and he was going under tunnels from West Germany to East Germany. So if he didn't make it home, I don't know what would have happened, because we were over in Germany at that time, what was West Germany, and I don't know if I would have ever found out what happened to him. So, but anyway, I trusted everything. He's a very smart man, as we know, and anything he would tell me, I would have no reason to disbelief.
And again, that's a reason for my success, that I'm still here. I always worked alone. I did not have to rely on a whole bunch of people, just one, and nobody had to rely on me. There's an old saying that all you need is 3 people to keep a secret, as long as 2 of them are dead. That's very true. The more people who are in that, the less chance that a secret will be kept. So you keep it to a minimum. I could not do today what I did back then, because you have to understand, in the 70s, When the hippie culture was very popular in the US, a lot of people traveled to India to go to various ashrams and study with gurus. And it was actually a status symbol in many Indian and Pakistani villages when you came through. If someone were to invite you into their house, they would immediately invite all their friends to show off, I have an authentic hippie here. Mm-hmm. And then they gain status within the community. Nowadays, there's such a mistrust, again, because of the factionalism and the wars, that the minute anyone that looks like me steps into an area like Afghanistan, he's going to be shot before he's going to be asked any questions. Mm-hmm. That, again, would be very dependent on where you're going. If I were to be sent, if I knew Spanish, which I don't, but if I were to be sent to South America, it would be just as easy, because I would have an easy time fitting in. You could not go in undercover in the middle of Afghanistan, because there's an awful lot of ground to cover, and you're going to be seen somewhere, and people are going to they're going to wonder what you're doing there. Mm-hmm. And they just don't trust. If you're not of their tribe, even if you're another Afghani, you know, Pashtuns hate the Tajiks, Tajiks hate the Pashtuns, which is why they'll never have a successful unified government. But someone like me, no, it would be virtually impossible. Mm-hmm. Well, not because of the alcoholism, because when I came out of recovery and I went back to work, it was time for my reinvestigation. If you have a top secret clearance, you're reinvestigated every 5 years. A secret is generally every 10 years. It was time for my reinvestigation, and I thought, well, this is as good a time as any to come clean. The investigator was sitting across the table, much as you were, and he asked the questions. Have you ever had a problem with alcohol, drugs? And no, they're already ready to say no, 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 because that's what everybody says. I said, yes, yes, yes. And they kind of looked up in surprise and shock, and I said, well, we're going to need you to put in writing exactly what those problems were and how you dealt with them. And after handing them a 10, 15, 20-page thick stack of my notes on what I had done and where I had been, not on the CIA stuff, but again, the mental problems as a result of the alcoholism, it took about 18 months longer than normal to get my top secret reevaluated. But the thinking there was, once I've come clean on all of that stuff, I've taken away the main reason, and that is blackmail. Nobody can come up to me and say, look, either you do what I say, or I'm going to go to the U.S. government, your command, and tell them that I saw you drunk here, that you used to go to this bottle shop 10 times a week or whatever. I would just say, go ahead. You know, they know. The reaction, aside from the family, since the book has come out, has been absolutely positive. I think 100% supportive. Mm-hmm. It answered a lot of questions for a lot of people, just like it did for my family, about why. First of all, we'd go to parties and I'd never say anything. I would just be there looking. I would never drink at parties, never drank outside of the house, because I couldn't afford to be seen doing that. Mm-hmm. And as far as the title, the subtitle there, the CIA assassin part, would not have been my choice of titles. It's provocative, it's publisher chosen because it does sell books. Mm-hmm. But when I explain to people that, you know, if you're a soldier and they give you a weapon, the soldier's job is to kill the enemy. I don't care if they say he's trained as a computer technician. When you wear a uniform, you are trained and expected to kill the enemy. Now, if you have to shoot your rifle 300 yards, 400 yards downrange, or drop a bomb from a height that you don't even know what's being blown up, do we call those people assassins or murderers? No, you call them soldiers. You call them pilots. What I did is they sent me into areas that required the same kind of duty, but you could not expect to send anybody in uniform into. You couldn't send a guy in uniform into Afghanistan to get rid of these drug dealers. It would never work. I did the same job as a soldier without the uniform. So I consider it no different. Mm-hmm. When it's put that way, first of all, people see the title and go, oh my God, I don't even want to read it, I don't want to think about it, we don't do that. But when it's explained and when they read it, then all of a sudden they say, absolutely, mm-hmm. You know, this had to be done, and I'm sorry you had to do it, and I'm sorry I had to do it. Mm-hmm. But my bottom line is, somebody had to, and I guess that was me, and I did it so that somebody else wouldn't have to do it, mm-hmm. Especially like my kids. I've got kids who will never say they want to be like their father as far as profession. And if they did, I'd have to find some way to lock them up for a while, because it's just insane.